Okay,
Okay.
we'll go ahead and get started right on time. I know people are still coming in, but this will be recorded and we'll put it on our website for those to watch later. I am delighted to have with us two eminent scholars of Southeast Asian politics, Kyaw Yin Hlaing and Joel Selway, to discuss the Myanmar and Thai elections, respectively. I'll give really brief introductions of each of them. Their bios are on our Southeast Asia Consortium website. And you can look either of them up, and you probably are familiar with both of them regardless. They will each then speak for about 15 minutes. We will then have Q&A. Feel free to put comments and questions in the chat, or you can put them to me directly or more broadly. And I will then do my best to direct those questions to the appropriate person or to both. And then we'll end with just 5-minute closing remarks from each of them. All right. So just by way of introduction, Dr. Kyaw Yin Hlaing is the chairman of the Myanmar Scholars Network and a visiting senior research fellow at Singapore's Institute of Southeast Asian Studies. He's been very actively involved in community peace building initiatives across various regions of Myanmar and possesses extensive experience in conducting research on Myanmar politics. He has been doing so for decades now, as an academic at the National University of Singapore, the City University of Hong Kong, an independent scholar at Cornell, an adjunct professor at SUNY Albany and elsewhere, as well as through just years and years of research. Joel Sawat Selway is a Thai British Associate Professor of Political Science at Brigham Young University. He has published very extensively on Thai politics, including from Cambridge University as Press, Coalitions of the Wellbeing, about Thaksin's 30 baht scheme, and then an edited volume on regional movements and identity demands and developing democracy more recently. He has dozens of journal articles and book chapters on issues from politics of health, elections, electoral reform, ethnic inequality, Thaksin, populism, regionalism, nationalism, Buddhism and politics, and more. He has 2 book manuscripts under review now at Cornell, and he is looking at both regionalism and then also Thai nationalism. And then also, particularly salient for today's topic, he's the co-founding and managing editor of ThaiDataPoints, which is really the probably best known, highly respected academic blog on Thai politics that's dedicated to, and here I'm quoting, the application of transparent methodological and theoretical analysis of current events in Thailand. So I'm really delighted to have you both here. Oh, and I'm Meredith Weiss. I'm a professor of political science at the State University of New York at Albany and director of the SUNY CUNY State University and City University of New York Southeast Asia Consortium. And so without further ado, I'll turn things over to Kyaw Yin Hlaing.
Thank you, Meredith. I understand that there are students from comparative democratization class. I used to teach that class for 2 years as well, when Meredith was away or too busy to teach the course. So, but unfortunately, the elections in Myanmar, what I'll be discussing, it will not have anything to do with democracy or the return of democracy to Myanmar. I mean, other than supporters of the military and the military-backed political parties, no one really uh, uh, expected anything positive out of this uh, elections, and at the same time, they still hope. So the kind of what I'll be discussing today will be based on some survey research I did in the last few months before the elections, and then also during and after the elections. We ask not almost, we ask more than 1,000 people, but after we carefully analyze the data, we managed to tabulate about 1,000 survey responses. The rest incomplete. So the kind of I will base my talk on the findings of that survey with about 1,000 people. So the elections, like in Myanmar, they were held through the 3 different phases. as many of you here should be familiar with the way things are going in Myanmar. Civil war has been going on almost throughout the country. So, depending upon who you talk to, the answer will vary, in terms of who controls the country. The military controls a little less than 50% of the country, but the rest, the resistance like to claim that they control the rest, but the fact of the matter is a large part of the rest is a contested areas. No one really controlled properly. In areas controlled by the military, the elections were held, and then in some of the contested areas, but the areas totally controlled by resistance group, the military couldn't do anything. So basically, people call for the resistance, and regular people call for boycotting the elections, and the turnout, voters turnout, according to the military, is a little over 52%. But when we ask people on the ground and the members of the political parties, it varies from the 20 to 40%. But there's no way of knowing exactly what the voters turnout is going to voter turnouts was like, but it seems that the figure mentioned by the military wasn't accurate. So the military, because of the call for the boycott, most people didn't really go out and vote. So even when some people, even though they didn't support the elections, they still went out and voted, largely because they were really worried about the reprisal from the military. Some of you might be familiar with the fact that the military has been using forced conscription to recruit soldiers for the army. And many local people were worried that if they didn't vote in the elections, their family members might be forcefully conscripted. So some people went out and voted for that reason, but they would just vote for the political parties randomly. That's why when you look at the outcome, the military-backed political parties, there are two. They receive votes from their own supporters consistently, but all the rest of the political parties, like a nationwide, all 5 political parties contested nationwide, and then 3 out of 4 didn't really receive a lot of votes. And then when you look at the outcome, the military-backed political party, Union Solidarity and Development Party, they won more than 80% of the seats. The two biggest oppositions in the upcoming parliament, one of which is still pro-military, National Unity Party. They each won. The two biggest political opposition parties won 5 seats each. So basically the parliament will be controlled, both houses of parliament will be controlled by the main military-backed political party. And then we also have about 33% of military delegates, non-elected military delegates nominated by the commander-in-chief. So basically, the entire parliament would be controlled by the pro-military people. So this wasn't the results that people didn't expect, but the political parties that contested were really disappointed. They didn't think that the outcome would be that one-sided. And a lot of people accused the military of using advance votes to win the elections. But I, for one, don't think that was the reason the military-backed political party won landslide. The main reason is most people simply didn't vote. And then they voted for, as I said earlier, random political parties. But supporters of military-backed political parties, they voted for their own parties. So basically, given the voters turnout, even the military-backed political parties would still win without cheating, because a large majority of people didn't support and didn't vote in the election. So the pro-military political parties is bound to win. So the public opinion toward the electoral results. So pro-military supporters of the military, supporters of the main military-backed political parties, Union Solidarity and Development Party, these supporters, more than like we out of 100, about 200 were pro-military, and then also pro-USDP, the acronym of the military-backed political parties. And then almost 95%, they basically supported the election results, and then also they thought that something good could come out of these elections. For their rationale is that the political power will not be concentrated in one person anymore, and then things could only get better. But out of the remaining 800, more than 80% basically believe that, 83% to be accurate, they believe that things couldn't get better. Things got, given the way things are going in the country, things could only get worse. So basically, what they are trying to say is people always ask who will be the next president, and then no one knows for sure whether the current commander-in-chief or acting president will be the next president. But that is the way things are going, and it seems like he might be the next president. So whether he is the next president or not, irrelevant, he will try to continue to control the government. And then the way he is trying to do, the judicial branch would not do anything that would upset him. And then the parliament would be at his command, and that entire government would be at his command. That's more than 80% of our survey participants, 83%, that's what they think. So basically, and a large majority of people didn't really support. And why did military still hold the elections? And then I for one don't think that the military really organized these elections for the country or for the people. I think that it has more to do with the frustration going on among its own supporters, the supporters of the military, the way things are going in the country, more than half the country not controlled by the military. The economy is going very badly. So the kind of elections would sort of like it would usher a new era, a new period. At least that's what they thought. And then this would change the current political landscape. That's the supporters of the military thought. So at least these people were happy with the elections and election results. And then this also allowed the military commander-in-chief to basically redistribute the positions in the government to his loyalists, and then to set aside some of the people he doesn't trust anymore. And then the third factor, the military is holding the elections is not for the people, again, for China. China, the military government needed Chinese support. They upset the commander-in-chief, and the military government upset China for a while at the very beginning, and then that cost them almost half the country, because the resistance could not have won the many of the battles. It could not have controlled a large part of the country without the ammunitions from pro-Chinese ethnic and organizations. So China started switch its support back to the military once the commander-in-chief and the military government really promised to protect the Chinese interests. So basically, the China, pleasing China is one of the factors the military tried to organize the elections. And then, like, the different communities, political parties, as I said earlier, they never thought elections were going to be perfect, and they never thought non-pro-military political parties, here I'm talking about, that the elections would pave the way would get the country out of the political deadlock and political mess. They never thought that. But at the same time, it would open up the door through which they might be able to bring in certain reforms gradually. But after seeing the outcome and the way the elections went, and they basically started saying, no, the elections didn't turn out to be the way they had expected. And the business community, the problem with Myanmar economy is, like, there isn't many sectors where people can really make profit. And that there are few sectors where people are still making money, but not legitimate business sector. The first sector people still making money is online scam. Both the military and Chinese and the Thai government are cracking down on this online scam, but there still are more than 30 online scam centers that are still operating in Myanmar and also in Cambodia. Even though all the blames were put on the Myanmar military and then the ethnic armed organizations along Thai-Myanmar border, Thai police officers were involved in it, so are Chinese officials. But that online scam, and then about local business people said about 30% of online scam was reinvested in the country, but mainly on speculation. So the kind of, if your business has something to do with online scam, you used to be able to make a lot of money, and then the speculation drawing on the money from online scam also drove up property prices. And the next sector that are still making money is drug. The next sector, gun running, and then the next sector, human smuggling. Because a lot of people are trying to leave the country, they don't have passports, from making all these fake passports to getting into foreign countries. These human smugglers are also making a lot of money. So, but the business sector had expected that the rules and regulations that keeps changing, they will be stabilized under the new government. I mean, they're hoping, but no one knows for sure how things will turn out to be. But the way the current military government is trying to manage the economy, things are in disarray. And then if this continues, people say the things can only get worse. And then the international community, the ASEAN is divided, but let's face it, the government in Naypyidaw, the capital of Myanmar, they didn't care much about what ASEAN thought. But ASEAN, they just talk and then didn't do anything. So the kind of ASEAN didn't really matter to them. Western countries, including the United States, have no proper interest in Myanmar. European countries are preoccupied with Ukraine, and then Myanmar doesn't have $60 million worth of oil or even the rare earth. Though we now have rare earth, but that area is controlled by the ethnic armed organizations, and also the mines are located along the China-Myanmar border. The US cannot reach them. So basically, The only countries that are genuinely interested in Myanmar are China, India, and Thailand, neighboring countries. They're not going to go against the military. They're working with the military. So the military, as long as China, India, Thailand, and Russia side with them, that's good enough. So the kind of the opinion of the rest of the international community, if the if the election results are welcome, they will it will be a bonus. If the rest of the countries don't recognize the election results, they couldn't care less. So basically, well, the country would get better in terms of peace building, very unlikely. Both sides, both the military and then also resistance groups have set conditions that either side is willing to meet. It's a pretty grim situation. And then when you look at the resistance, will they be able to bring down the military? Highly unlikely. That they are very divided. They're going after each other. Just recently, resistance groups surrendered through the military. That's largely because of infighting. And then there's a huge resistance fatigue, both in the resistance groups and then also among people. Like many people we interviewed, not part of the survey. We interviewed them. We conducted in-depth interviews with selected people. They started. Some people started saying they don't support the elections. They don't support the military. However, they are fed up living in the resistance control areas because that area got pounded by airstrikes constantly. So it's unsafe to live. And then like they don't have regular access to healthcare and their children they cannot go to school regularly. That's why many of them started answering. Just recently, the more and more people have started saying they would rather live under the military control area than in the resistance control area. That is not to say that they have switched their support to the military. They still don't like the military, but they want to they're just frustrated with the situation they are in. If they have to choose, they will still choose the resistance. However, living and supporting are two different
Right.
things. So basically, that is the situation. One last thing I'll tell you is the role of Aung San Suu Kyi. I'll stop, Meredith, after this. One last thing I'll tell you is that I mean many of you here should know Aung San Suu Kyi. She's still in prison. She is in her early 80s and then not getting younger. But a large majority of people living in predominantly Pama, the largest ethnic group, Pama area, they still support Osu. But all others, they're not, they still respect Osu, but they're not sure they would want her back as the leader of the resistance movement. So on the whole, I mean, I prepared, I can speak for hours about the current situation, but on the whole, the situation in Myanmar is still very volatile, and then a lot of things are still unpredictable, a lot of unknown. So we don't know for sure what will be like, what will things be like even in 2026. But I, for one, think that things are not going to get better anytime soon. Although entire political mass we now see in the country will continue in the foreseeable future. Sorry, I took a little longer time. I'll
It's all
stop here.
right. On that highly optimistic but realistic note, we will turn to Joel. And make sure you unmute, Joel.
Okay, can you see my slides here? Okay, wonderful. So, yeah, we're talking about the elections in Thailand, which took place on the 8th of February. And So just a little bit of background. I know that there's a class on comparative democratization there, and so just a little bit of context on the democracy aspect of these elections. There was some hope going into these elections in terms of improvements in democracy. And I'm not going to say a complete return to democracy, but some improvements. This is the third set of elections since the 2014 coup and the 2017 constitution that the military wrote. And it's the first set of elections without the need for a joint sit-in with the Senate, which has been a wholly appointed body by the military to select the prime minister. So more potential freedom for the winning party to form a government. Also, in the pre-election polls leading up to this, the two military-aligned parties, one which had been established by the leader of the junta in 2014, were both polling at very low numbers. They both didn't do as well in the last elections, 76 seats between them out of 500 in the last elections, and so now even fewer. And so the hopes for a return to civilian rule were somewhat higher, but there were still some obstacles to the democracy, and a lot of this has to do with the environment in between the elections in 2023 and the ones this year. In that time period, two prime ministers from the non-establishment party, Pheu Thai, were ousted by the judiciary. Um, and the largest party from the last elections, the Progressive Move Forward Party, was blocked by that Senate, which is now not in operation in these elections, from forming the government. And then they were subsequently dissolved. And they have reformed under the name of the People's Party, and you'll see them there in orange. Parties in Thailand tend to be color coded. And so they got the most votes in the last election, or the most seats, should I say, 151 seats. The Pheu Thai Party, which has been the longest standing kind of anti-establishment party in Thailand since 2001, came second with 141 seats. And then the Bumjai Thai Party, which originally was an offshoot of the Pheu Thai Party, but has since kind of evolved into a more pro-establishment party, came third with 71 seats. So keep an eye on that party because they're going to be important in the results for this year. But that's where we were coming into these elections. And again, the denominator there is 500 seats. So a little bit again on that coalition. At the last elections, the largest party wasn't able to form the coalition. So the second largest party was able to do that. That's Pheu Thai. And they invited these three parties, two of which are military parties, and then the third of which this party here, I don't know if you see my cursor going, but the Phumjai Thai Party, they were also in on that coalition. And in the opposition was the largest seat-getting party, the People's Party, there. So Pheu Thai Party had two prime ministers that they went through that were dissolved. And then in 2025, we had a coalition led by the Phumjai Thai Party. Again, that was the prime minister. Their party only had 71 seats out of 500. So if you can kind of get a picture of how the ability of the largest seat-getting party to form a government, how difficult that is, this is a good illustration of that. And then in the opposition, we had Pheu Thai, who moved to the opposition after their second prime minister was removed from office. And then People's Party was still in opposition, but they did throw their support behind the prime ministerial candidate of the Phumjai Thai Party and allowed him to become prime minister. And that had a little bit of a backfire effect, as we'll talk about going forward. Some of the conditions that the People's Party gave for that support, even though they remained in the coalition, they said you have to dissolve parliament within 4 months, and we want to reform the constitution, so you need to hold a referendum for that. And again, they pledged to stay out of the cabinet posts And this was their attempt to kind of appease their supporters, right? And their very kind of progressive ideals about not getting into coalition with pro-establishment parties. There was still a little bit of a backfire effect from their own supporters for that. But yeah, one of the primary things that it did was able to give a very kind of national prominence to the leader of the Phumjai Thai party, who before that had kind of been seen as a lesser figure, if that makes sense. But he was put there right at a time when Thailand and Cambodia were having some hostilities on the border, and he got a lot of legitimacy from some of his rhetoric during that period of time. So leading up to these elections, the polls are always kind of funny because the polls only capture the party list vote, even when they're asked about the constituency vote. So the polls themselves aren't really that useful to look at, but the expert predictions that come usually from people who do those polls, they all predicted a BJT win. And so they predicted them to double their votes, but to get more, or to double their seats, sorry, but to get more seats than any other party. They were looking at the 140 to 150 range. And surprisingly, Bumjai Thai came out with 193 of the 500 seats. So this was certainly a surprise, I think, to everybody. Um, and probably mostly surprising the military, who have for some time been trying to engineer some pro-establishment party to win those elections. And so for them, this was almost like a dream come true. Um, so just to kind of let you know what happened to the other parties. So this was the largest party in the last elections. So they moved down from 151 seats to 118 seats. And then Pheu Thai, who came second with 141 seats last time, almost halved their seats. They were a big casualty from these last elections. I didn't update the seats on that, but Boom Jai Thai went up to 193 seats. Democrats got a couple of seats less at 23, and the PPRP, which was the coup leaders party, they only ended up with 4 seats. So that's that. So I wanted to kind of give 6 lessons from these elections, what we learned about them. So the first lesson that I learned is just how much parties were weakening. And we've always kind of known elections in Thailand are a lot about local dynamics and things like that. But there had been, especially for the largest party, the Orange Party, the People's Party, that party label had been quite significant at the national level. And the Pheu Thai label had a lot of purchase in terms of like party labels. But this particular elections really showed that those things were weakening. And if you want to read something about that, Aim Simpeng, who's a Thai political scientist in Australia, has written a great piece in the East Asian Forum about the split ticket voting. But this is just to kind of illustrate these split tickets here. So this is on the party list here. Thais get 2 votes. They get to vote for a party, a national party on the party list. There's only 100 seats involved in there, and they get to vote for their local constituency. There's 400 seats there. But this is the map of each of those 400 constituencies and how they voted for the national party. So this is not 400 seats. This only ends up being 100 seats. But this is which party got the most party list seats in that constituency. Now, one thing that's really interested in this is that the party that actually wins is the dark blue party. And you can see that on this party list, they are not very prominent. In fact, they only get the most party list votes in 60 constituencies. You can see a lot of orange here. You can see some red up in the northeast there and some blue in the south. But that's really different than the next map I'm going to show you, which is the constituency seats. And here you can see that dark blue all over the country. And then you see another color pop up here that doesn't really pop up in the other map, which is a green party, which we'll talk about later as well. So again, bottom line is these 2 maps show 2 very different Thailands. One which is a very kind of local dynamics, run by local brokers, and banyai, which are these large houses, but very kind of local groups and dynamics going on here. And the other one is the National Party tier list. But you can see that people actually split their vote. So they would vote for primarily Bum Jai Thai in the local constituency, and then for some other party on the National Party list. So some quite interesting dynamics here that really kind of hammer home this idea that the parties are weakening. And lesson number two just kind of follows on from this, which is the increasing influence of brokers and local machines. And they really did win this election. This is a map of the northern region, and the reason why I chose to show this has traditionally been the home stronghold of the Red Party, and you can hardly see, oh, where have they gone? You can hardly see any red up there. Above the line is the upper north, or the Lanna region, and that is the home region of the Shinawat clan, and they have had three Shinawats from that clan be prime ministers. They've had a relation be another prime minister. Their prime ministerial candidate this time was a nephew of the Shinawats. So big clan there coming in Chiang Mai. And you can see that they lost out big even in their so-called home region here. So something was going on that changed. One of the things that was going on we saw in the last elections, the Orange Party and their National Party brand was really attractive to people in the north. But then in this election, something happened, and that is a lot of those local brokers switched allegiance to the Green Party. And now the Green Party is kind of centered here in Piao from an individual called Tamanat. And he was originally in the Pheu Thai party, had switched to the military party in the last elections, and then kind of broke off and had his own party. But he was really successful, especially in the north, in convincing lots of local brokers to switch allegiance. And so you can see, again, this was a big surprise in the north that Pheu Thai had hardly any seats going into that. A third lesson that we get from this is that there seem to be some lessons learned from the last elections, especially by the conservative parties. And again, whether there was any informal coordination going on, whether they said to each other, hey, this is ours, you go compete somewhere else. There definitely was some effective coordination going on. So whether they just kind of realized, hey, we can't really compete here, so we will step back and allow the other Conservative Party to kind of win that one. There definitely seemed to be more coordination going on. So one way to measure this is by looking at the gap in the votes, or the average margin between whoever the winner was from the Conservative Party and the next largest Conservative Party. And we can kind of see that this increased by about 7 to 8 percentage points from last time. So whenever the eventual winner of the elections, BJT, won a constituency, the next largest Conservative Party, which was the Green Party, KT, got about 45% percentage points less than the winning one. The progressive or anti-establishment parties down here, so the People's Party, the red and the orange parties, their gap was only about 27%. So just shows that they were able to coordinate a little bit less. And on the right-hand side, you can just see that this was, both of them did better at coordinating than last time, but still not as much as this time. So the Conservative Party, one of the reasons they did so well is that they didn't compete with each other as much within those constituencies. And then I've written on this topic in some of my commentary. You'll see a lot of talk about nationalism and how nationalism won BJT the election, and there is truth to that. So one of the reasons that he does so well, Anutin, is because he became the prime minister in the 6 to 8 months leading up to those elections and took on that very kind of anti-Cambodia stance, very pro-nationalism stance. And he definitely got a bump from that. But he got a huge bump from that coordination that I talked about before. But just to kind of hammer home this idea that nationalism is overplayed a little bit, a couple of data points here. One is that the turnout was just down by about 10%. And this doesn't really happen when you kind of have this big nationalist surge. You normally see turnout go up. Turnout actually went down quite significantly. Um, and then also the Blue Party, as I've already shown you already, was not the winner on that national party list, right? And so if national issues and nationalism was the issue of the day, you would have expected them to have won out on that list. They certainly did better than they did last time, but they only got 18% on that list. And Thai, who ended up with only 74 seats, came pretty close to them and got 15%. So altogether, the anti-establishment parties, Thai and PP, get the most on that party list, and they're pretty popular still nationally. And BJT still getting that bump from that nationalism, but not quite as much as I think has been played out. Another lesson that we're still kind of seeing play out is whether we can have trust in these elections, and trust in a couple of different ways. So, number one, trust is if I go vote, will my party actually get into power? So the efficacy of that vote. And certainly supporters of the Orange Party, the People's Party, uh, don't really have as much trust in the efficacy of their vote because they saw their party get the most votes last time and was never able to form a government. But there were some other things that were happening this time, which cause for some concern. Again, I've already mentioned that the lower turnout, and so less interest. That's kind of a marker of the efficacy. There has also been a lot of allegations of inaccurate vote counts. And one of the largest things on in the news was a constituency in the province of Chonburi. The ECT investigated this. They presented their evidence and said that there wasn't much evidence for this. But there are a number of different constituencies around the country where there was a lot of at least confusion and allegations of inaccurate counts. That seems to have died down a lot. I don't know whether it's died down because there is now evidence that was inaccurate, or whether it's died down because they've just kind of figured out didn't affect too many constituencies, and now we just got to focus on coalition making. I actually think the next one is the most problematic, and this is the whole barcode controversy. A lot of the ballots had barcodes on them, and there's this fear that people's individual votes can be tracked and traced. And so some of this tracing has been linked to what has been labeled grey capital. And actually, my co-panelist here described a lot of those grey capital areas as he was talking about Myanmar. Some of that has kind of spread over to Thailand. So the scam centers, the human trafficking. This is the grey capital that there's a lot of fear of in Thailand, especially as it kind of infects democracy there. And so there's been a lot of talk about grey capital kind of checking up on their votes through this barcode system. And that has led overall to kind of less trust in the election commission. And so been a lot of criticism of the elections there. And the last one, I've kind of already hammered this home, and this is that the military's plan, with their 2014 coup and their 2017 constitution, I think this has been better than they could have ever dreamed of, right? They have tried consistently since 2006 to take down the Red Party, Thai, changing election rules time after time, never being successful. But this time they finally managed to pull it out, right? And probably in ways that they couldn't really have imagined before, right? I always said in 2011 when Yingluck and Thai were having issues with the whole rice purchasing controversy, that the Conservatives' best deal was just to kind of stand back and let that play out and let the Reds become unpopular with their own supporters because they'd done some things that could have damaged their supporters. But this time again, they've kind of ridden some of the wave of that unpopularity in the Red Party's handling of the Cambodia controversy and the inability of the economy to kind of kickstart itself. And again, they've just kind of allowed those parties in some ways to kind of damage their own credibility with their own supporters, and then for the BJT to pick up a little bit of credibility from this nationalism boost. So that's where I'm going to leave it, and I'll hand back to Meredith to do the Q&A.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let me spotlight. All right. So for anyone who has, we've got some questions already, but everyone else, please feel free to put questions in the chat. I will moderate as best I can. I have a bunch of questions, but I want to leave as much time as possible for questions from the floor. So let's start with you, Jaw. The first question from Paul Sarno. Do you think the Arakan army will succeed in going further into Bago or Ayeyarwady regions? If not, do you think it will retreat into Rakhine? I realize these are very difficult questions.
Thanks, Paul, for your question. Depends, because there's still a lot of unknowns. So two main conditions. First, the availability of ammunitions. The military gained control of certain areas recently, largely because a lot of resistance groups are having difficulty getting ammunitions. For instance, the price of a bullet that they used to be able to buy in Thailand for about 500 bahts. Right now, the price has gone up to 3,000 to 5,000 bahts, depending upon when you buy it. And then resistance groups lately are having difficulty getting donations from different groups, like especially from diaspora for various reasons. So if AA and continues to receive ammunitions, it will be in their advantage. But not just that. When you look at ethnic armed organizations operating in predominantly Burma area, or like in Zagai or the Kachin Independence Army in Zagai, it's not just because of these ethnic armies, but also because of the involvement of local Burma People's Defense Forces. When you look at that northern Shan State, people always discounted the contributions made by Burma PDF, People's Defense Forces. So if these the People's Defense Forces are in a stronger position, AA will have a chance in Ayeyarwady, not in Bago. Bago is too far away from their areas, and some parts of Magui they might be able to expand in their troops into. But right at this moment, given the way things are going with the local Burma People's Defense Forces, not impossible, but it will be extremely difficult for AA to take control of areas in Ayeyarwady and Bago. Even they might be able to attack, but attacking and taking permanent control are two different things, as you know. But it will be really difficult for them to keep control of these areas. AA is also present not just in Rakhine State, also in Chin State. So they have stretched quite far themselves quite far. So it will be difficult. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jaw. Joel, there's a request for you to put the results of the 2026 election slides back up. So perhaps if you could do that while you answer the next question, which is from Yongji Suneng. How's the traditional urban-rural divide shifted in this election as the People's Party won in Bangkok and conservative Bum Chai Thai won rural regions, which used to be the stronghold of Pheu Thai? And you'll need to unmute, please.
Okay, yeah. So these are the results here. These are the ones that you wanted to see. Um, so could you
I'm not
repeat the
seeing the
question?
slide. Are others?
Oh, okay. Let's
No.
try that again. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay,
How about
now we see it. Yeah, yeah.
that? Okay.
And the question was whether the urban-rural divide has shifted since the Orange Party won in Bangkok and Bumchai Thai run in rural regions instead of Phua Thai.
Yeah. So in the last elections, the People's Party did well in Bangkok as well. They did better this time round, and they tend to have a lot of support in urban constituencies across the country. Um, so in some ways, you know, things are kind of the same as they were in 2019. Um, but yeah, certainly the presence of BJT in rural areas is different. And again, I think most of this can be explained by the switching of allegiance of local brokers.
Mhm.
Uh, and not necessarily some type of change in party preference. And you can kind of see that in the differences in the two votes that they have. That when they are presented with the party list here, they are still primarily voting for the orange and red parties, for the People's Party and Pheu Thai. So I would say I mean, it's definitely moved away from a complete dominance from Pheu Thai controlling rural areas. But some of that was kind of broken down even in the last elections by the Progressive Party that kind of had a little bit more pure pro-democratic chops, if that makes sense. Um, Something else to consider as you think about this, again, is that originally BJT was a splinter of the Pheu Thai party, right? So sometimes when we talk about conservative and progressive and things like that, they can kind of muddy the waters in terms of thinking about ideological allegiances. But yeah, certainly, I think you can just look at a map and say, well, BJT did manage to win more rural constituencies. And so, um, but whether those rural constituencies have gone more ideologically conservative or not is where I would definitely give some pause. I think most of this is explained by those local brokers and some of those changes in allegiances there. So yeah.
So the next question, also for Joel, and maybe you can unshare the screen now so that we can, see you in full. Um, is that but you may have just answered with that last bit of your question there, which is from Eric White. What is Phunchai Thai's plan for preserving their support and expanding upon their success? What is the People's Party's plan for regaining support and electorally recovering?
Yeah. Well, I wish I knew the answers to both of those questions. I think out of the two parties, the People's Party will have a plan, right? And their plan has been somewhat consistent, which is we will continue, right, with a very pro-democratic stance. I think they kind of see the mistake even in throwing their weight temporarily behind electing the other candidate for these elections. So I would suspect them to kind of to regather ranks and to double down on kind of their decision
Mhm.
to not go into coalitions with parties that are not really committed to
Mhm.
democracy. And so overall, their support didn't go down tons, right? So they were down about 3% on the national party list. Um, they were down a bit in the constituencies, but overall, I wouldn't say that they got hammered in these
Mhm.
elections. So certainly, I think they'll be very disappointed with the election results. But my
Mhm.
feeling is that would just strengthen their resolve in terms of their pro-democracy outlook. Um, BJT, again, to the extent that you can call it a party with a permanent label is kind of where I'm falling down on thinking about this because there was such chopping and changing in the underlying local brokers in these last elections and again, it's not really clear that those are stronger long-term allegiances to BJT. Um, and so, even Pheu Thai itself was not completely down and out, right? The number of seats were really quite bad. But in terms of like the actual watering down of their vote within constituencies, they went down overall, and which is why they lost so many seats. But yeah, it's not clear that all of that support just kind of switched over to BJT. So, I mean, I think if BJT are looking to be a more permanent party on the scene, it's mostly going to be about locking down those local brokers and demonstrating through their ability to rule that they are a party that is
Mhm.
serious and can be relied on in the long term, rather than just like another wholesale switch to somebody else in the next election. So
Right.
I,
Right.
I think their best path to success is ruling well, governing well, and demonstrating that they can do that.
Thanks. Okay, so the next question for Joel kind of aligns with one that I had for Joss. So I'm going to ask you both a version of this. So for Joel, how will the Thai election results and the new government influence Thai relationships with regional countries, especially the US and China? And what's the impact for geopolitics? And Jaw, sort of a twist on that. You mentioned that, most of the world apart from China, India, and Thailand, just really has not focused much on Myanmar anymore. But I'm curious whether there's been much of a response within Myanmar, in the junta or among other factions, to the Thai results. In other words, you just even thinking about how many from Myanmar are currently now in Thailand, kind of waiting things out. But whether there's a geopolitical aspect there, also in terms of the close proximity of a fairly surprising election result in the neighboring state. So either of you could start.
I'll let Joel start since I've been doing some speaking on the last two questions.
Well, uh, during the time of the campaign, people posted a lot of messages about remarks by Thai nationalist politicians.
Hmm.
Other than that, they don't really expect much from Thailand, because for better or for worse, that all Thai governments, they will try to have some relationship with the Burmese military, that the local people think the Thai will have to the Thai government will have to do. But for regular people, I dare say, including myself, that Thailand has hosted millions of Myanmar. So
Hmm.
whoever is in power, we don't want to have any problems with. So like most people, they stay out of Thai politics,
Right.
because in one way or another, we could have problem with Thai nationalists. So especially in Thailand, some Thai nationalist civil society groups are mobilizing people against the Burmese who are working there. Because of that, the regular people, their position is, let's not have any problem with Thai people and the Thai government, regardless of who is in power. For the government in Myanmar, they are also trying to have a decent relationship with Thailand. The current Thai foreign minister, who apparently will continue to be the foreign minister when they form
Hmm.
the new government. He just had a meeting with the military's foreign minister in Phuket. They had a apparently very frank discussion. He said one thing in the media and another to the Burmese government whenever he went to Naypyidaw. So basically, the Thai for Thailand, like they would say things that will make them popular in the international media, but at the same time, they would also say things that will please the Burmese military.
Hmm.
So that is basically the situation.
Okay. And Joel?
Yeah, so I don't imagine a very big shift in Thai foreign policy, at least in the balance between being pro-China or pro-US. That's been pretty consistent across governments, regardless of orientation towards the establishment or not. But we have kind of mentioned that the BJT has campaigned on nationalist rhetoric. And so there are a
Yeah.
couple of areas where I do kind of see I wouldn't say big problems or anything, but a little bit more resistance from Thailand. So, for
Hmm.
example, we've already seen in relation to the Cambodia conflict that President Trump has stepped in and got them to sign some peace treaties, which were then subsequently ignored or reneged on by the Thai government. And so, if there's any attempt by the US administration to come back in on that particular topic, BJT almost has kind of like an electoral mandate now to continue with the policy that it was doing before that, which was to ignore
Hmm.
those things. Um, so
Hmm.
that's a possible area where there could be some conflict, especially since the US and the current president has kind of prided themselves on resolving those types of conflicts. I don't think Thailand is just going to cave on that and all of a sudden um, change its direction.
And
Also, I think a little bit with this slightly stronger nationalist bent, right, is this desire to look a little bit stronger in the region. It has taken a back step within the region, I think, over the last couple of decades. But especially with relation to China, China has been putting a lot of pressure on Thailand to continue the whole Belt and Road Initiative and extend the train line down through Thailand. And Thailand has already for a long time been dragging its feet for that, changing its mind, being really slow at constructing things. And so I expect if there's any direction on that, that it will be a slowing down again on that particular project, which
mhm.
again, I don't think it's going to cause huge problems, but will probably, cause a little extra strain in those relationships with China.
Thanks. Another question for you. So I'm kind of extrapolating from a semi-withdrawn question from Chris Ahmed on what the prospects are for opposition parties going forward to attempt to counter the military monarchy framework. As Chris notes, you've sort of answered that, but I'm wondering if you could link that, or if there is a link here with a detail you mentioned, which was the really noticeable decline in turnout. And thinking about youth politics across the region, for instance. Do you know if there are patterns in that decline? If, for instance, not having a strong stand, such as the Orange Party did, under an earlier name last time, if that is part of why there seems to be lower turnout, or is that not related?
Yeah, I haven't actually seen any really good surveys breaking down that voter
Okay.
turnout. But I have tried to like just look at the sheer number of votes that the People's Party has been getting around the country,
Hmm.
um, and trying to figure out what particular places that vote is going down, and so I suspect that there will be some correlation with a decrease
Yeah.
in the youth vote. And a lot of this, it's hard to say whether that is because they're displeased with this supporting of BJT, as the kind of the interim prime minister last year, or if they just think, well, this isn't really worth it, right? We protested; those protests got stopped in 2022 before the last elections, and there haven't really been any big ones since that time. And the military has done a good job at cracking down on some of those
Right.
individuals. And so they're sending very strong messages to uh, that progressive movement about what's going to happen if they do this. So, in some ways, I think that overall whole movement, the progressive movement, has kind of just kind of stalled and quieted a little bit. And so I'm not surprised at all that they haven't come out to vote as much because, what's the
Yeah.
point in doing that if you're not going to win and have a chance to rule? But
Hmm.
we talked about this before that obviously the People's Party wants people to come out and vote. Generally, I think the vote is counted and respected fairly in Thailand, and so it would have been good to continue to send a message and saying, hey, there's still as much support for this. But that decline in turnout obviously takes that talking point away, where the
Right.
establishment can say, well, maybe you're not as popular as you thought you were, right? But yeah, overall, that's just kind of declined. So yeah, what are the prospects for the opposition party to do stuff? Well, I mean, unless we start seeing defections, which we saw lots of defections and party switching, it's almost like the 90s called and wanted their party system back, right? We saw lots of that party switching going on, very reminiscent of the 90s. If that is now just like a thing that's come back to the party system in Thailand, then we should expect to see people jump ship if BJT is not ruling very well. Um, and so yeah, that's really the only way that you can kind of see the opposition, especially
Hmm.
that progressive movement, getting
Right.
any momentum back.
Great. Thanks. Um, we have time for a couple more questions before closing remarks if people want to pose some more. But John, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about what happens next. So, this is sort of a strange electoral exercise in as much as you noted, it's not that there was that there's any real external legitimacy that this exercise incurs, nor does there seem from your survey results to be all that much domestic credence given to these elections. But does the fact of having now been at least officially, formally elected shift the calculus at all for the junta if they're governing not as a junta but as a party again, pretending that this was really a promissory coup in the Thai sense? Is there any greater space for softliners, for instance? Is there sort of a level of internal credibility that they gain, however, at least amongst themselves, amongst the governing class, even if not amongst the broader public? In other words, how does this shift the governing landscape, if it does at all?
Really difficult to say at this point, but the way things are going, uh, at least in the foreseeable future, quite unlikely that there will be bigger space for what we might consider softliners. But the problem here is people who consider themselves softliners are not considered softliners by the general public, because anybody associated with the military are not considered softliners. And then, there are some groups in the country that are calling for uh, genuine dialogue among different groups before any form of elections. And then these people, I mean, what these people are calling for, the military or the military-backed political parties that will be leading the new
Mhm.
government, they're not going to give in. So what the new government is willing to do, and what they said they will be doing, will not be acceptable to a large majority of people.
Mhm.
One thing with the current military government, and then what is the new government, what the new government is likely to do, they're not going to tolerate any form of challenges. So that's why, when the government is not tolerant of uh, even peaceful protests or some peaceful
Mhm.
challenges. People, as you know, people tend to go extreme or violent. So the kind of have, I don't really foresee the space for so-called softliners expanding
Mhm.
anytime soon. So one last thing I'll add to is the actual opposition to the new government will come from within the so-called ruling party, because there are people in the what we need to understand is about 80% of the parliamentarians, they're not from the military, they are
Mm.
civilians. And then, some of them, they have a track records of creating problems for whoever might be in power, if unless they are given some influential positions. They don't really have enough positions for each and every troublemakers. But these
Right.
troublemakers are likely to cause problems. Might not be in the interest of the country, might be in their own personal interest, but that could give headache to whoever will be in control of the government. Yeah.
Okay. To give Joel a chance to rest his voice, we'll turn to get a pair of two questions for Joel. The first is what parties are likely to join BJT in the governing coalition? And then the second is People's Party seems ambivalent at best or ineffective about pursuing constituency votes versus via the Banyai electoral broker strategy. Is that accurate? And if so, what's their paths to increased constituency vote success if political polarization based on democratization or anti-military issues is muted?
Yeah. So we've already seen some early coalition negotiations going on. So Pheu Thai, the Red Party, has agreed to join that coalition, I believe, at the last time I looked. One of the kind of big surprises, from if you look at it from one point of view, is that that other kind of conservative party I told you about, the Green Party, that
Hmm.
had kind of, at least strategically withdrawn candidates in constituencies where BJT was strong and vice versa. They don't look set to join that coalition, which is really interesting.
Hmm.
And so I think it tells you a lot about the meaning of ideologies in Thai politics, right? A lot of this has to do with the dynamics over what ministries you get. And in these negotiations, what kind of compromises you're likely to get. So, if Pheu Thai is joining this coalition, it's likely to have made more compromises than the Green Party, Glatam. Yeah, so I think that kind of reinforces a lot of what we're seeing in these elections. And again, it's very kind of back to the 1990s, where there is that clamoring
Hmm.
over individual ministries. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I think BJT is going to uh, try and minimize as many of those things that it has to give out to other parties. Again, I don't know the exact ins and outs of that so far, but I would imagine it's because the leader of the Green Party he's pretty strong. He's got a pretty strong personality, and so I'm sure his demands were pretty strong as well. Um,
Yeah.
so then the question, what was the second question about the
It was
People's
the
Party?
People's Party. If they are not so great at the Banyai strategy,
Yeah,
is that accurate? And then how else can they gain constituency votes given
yeah,
the shift in what cleavages matter?
right. Yeah, I mean, I think their strategy is for the long term, right? Which is, and I think if there was any kind of question about maybe should we, at least talk to some local people who are maybe a little bit more that look like us, that share our values or something like this,
Mhm.
that they would have been dissuaded of that just by their last kind of supporting of BJT. I feel like that they've got to
Mhm.
go back to their very strong position, which is we will not touch anybody who does that type of politics, right? So
Mhm.
in the medium term, at least, I think they are looking at doing as well as they did in the last elections at best, and then kind of hoping for like a really catastrophic government by the current BJT party, and then there's kind of space at
Right.
that national level. We've already seen that they're the best at the national level, right? When people think of a national party that can rule, they are clearly thinking of the People's Party as their number one choice. So I think they just got to keep at that, get back to having more seats from that tier, and then hoping that there is this gradual change in the electorate over time when they see a party that is definitely committed to this and can stand in opposition and say, that's what you're going to get. Every time you vote for them, you're going to get more of that. And so I think they've got to stick at that and just wait it out.
Wow. Interesting. All right, back to Myanmar and Jaw. This is a question from Peter Knapp. This is a question that could have a long answer, but we've got a few minutes. How do you assess the likely effect of introducing proportional representation on ethnic political parties and ethnic voting patterns in Myanmar? Do you anticipate more fragmentation or strategic coordination among the ethnic actors? So some key questions, and this could lead to a nest of other questions about what framework thinking of electoral rules moving forward might work and with what effects.
Not that much. The first part of the
Mhm.
question for PR, the impact of PR. The main reason is the way PR was used, and then also voters turnout.
Mhm.
People didn't have to vote for PR. No separate elections for PR. What they did was they used the votes the candidate, I mean, the PR is used in the elections for upper house, and then they use a mixed system, both first past the post and PR. So the votes each party candidates from each party receive in the first past the post elections are used or were used to calculate the seats for PR. No separate elections. So basically, voters turn out mostly, as I said before, supporters of the military and the military-backed political parties came out and voted. That's why it would not have made any major difference. But one thing that I should say is, when you look at different ethnic areas, the in areas with a large number of non proponents of the voters who are not supporters of the military or military-backed political parties, they tend to win. Like, one of the biggest political parties that in the parliament will be from the Naga region, not the Indian Naga, the Naga region from our side, a tiny political party. They won 9 seats in the both houses of the Union Parliament, and they won largely because in their areas, non-USDP, non-military supporters came out and voted, and that they only knew their own ethnic political party, so they voted for it. The same thing in the southern Shan state. Some Shan political parties and then also both political parties won some seats, largely because people who didn't support uh, the military or the USDP, they voted for their own ethnic political parties. But in areas where the voters turnout is really low, the military-backed political parties won. So basically, the difference is on the voters turnout, not on the PR. Okay. Strategic coordination among ethnic actors. Uh, the problem, uh, the problem is China. Northern groups have been instructed by China not to support NUG, the exile government, National Unity Government. So these groups, uh, they're not going to do anything that will upset China. So the kind of privately they are in communication with each other, but publicly they don't really work with each other. Northern groups used to provide ammunitions to other groups, but they don't do that anymore. But what you will see is in some areas, you'll see split within each ethnic armed organizations. In Chin State, for instance, there's a huge split among the different Chin armed groups. Recently, they killed the number of people killed by the number of I mean more members of Chin defense forces were killed by other Chin defense forces than by the military. And then there's also a huge split within the current national union. However, what people locally called the K3C, Karenni, Kachin, and Karen, and then also Chin National Union, the Chin National Front, they are trying to work things out. They are trying to establish a federal council. Uh, but a more coherent coordination, people are waiting for it, and they haven't been able to come up with.
Okay, thanks. All right. We now will turn to concluding remarks. This could be other factors you'd like to raise, interesting things to look forward to, things that occurred to you that that the your counterpart speaker raised that raise other issues in your own mind, and we'll reverse our sequence. So we'll start with Joel. You have approximately 5 minutes.
Okay. Wow. Let's see what I want to say here. Um, yeah, so I think the issue that has kind of come up in a lot of these comments has to do with the success of BJT governing and what it needs to do. And so maybe if I could say a few things about that. Um, so I think corruption is one of the biggest issues that is on the mind of Thais right now. In the latest Transparency International rankings that came out a couple of weeks ago, I believe, Thailand has fallen beneath a lot of its neighbors, including Laos and Vietnam. So it's now viewed as more corrupt than those two countries. Um, and this is pretty significant in a country in which obviously one of the pretexts of the military coup in 2014 was to reduce corruption amongst elected parties. And now here we are, 12 years after that coup, and Thailand has fallen to some of its lowest levels on that corruption perception index. And so the Prime Minister has talked about this. This has certainly been one of the emphases that he has made in the last couple of weeks since those elections. And so certainly it's on people's minds. As I mentioned before, there is this concern with grey capital, and that those are issues that are leaking across borders into both Myanmar and Cambodia. It's of concern to China, and I think it is of concern to economic actors within Thailand as well, that the whole kind of corruption environment improves there. So I think that's kind of the number one thing that Anutin has to tackle. Again, otherwise we are going to get back to very 1990s like levels of corruption, and we all know where that ended up, right, with the financial crisis. And so certainly I don't think anybody wants to see a repeat of that. So that's definitely got to be number one on their list. Number two is just the economy itself, right? And so improving the economy, ever since the 2006 coup, the economy has never really performed that well. Um, and so that has been a focus of all of the campaigns of all of the parties, right? Different ways and different ideas of getting the economy going. Um, and so, BJT has its own approach to that, and we'll see how successful that has been. But I think just generally, if you tackle the first one, you're going to be more chance to be successful in the second one. So if BJT can do those two things, if it can really eliminate corruption, if it can perform well on the economy, again, if you look at the military's kind of long-term plan and its desire to down the influence of those anti-establishment parties, the best thing that can happen is for this now pro-establishment Conservative Party to actually do well. That was what the military always had its legitimacy on, right? Which was when we were in charge of the economy, we saw Thailand have this amazing economic growth. As soon as we introduced political parties and elected politicians, it all went downhill from there. And so, if that is the main thing in which the establishment is going to get its legitimacy back, and for us to have a long-term serious civilian party that competes in elections, then now is their chance. And so they got a pretty big win in these elections, and so not a majority, but I think large enough for people to say, okay, the onus is on you. Show us what you've got. Yeah, I think a lot of the future of Thailand will depend on how successful they are.
Yeah, it's so interesting thinking of both these countries. Just getting back to these foundational questions of what the government actually governs. We're talking about
Yeah.
the gray economy in Thailand, and then in Myanmar, the fact that scams, drugs, and human smuggling, if I wrote that down correctly, Ja, are like the key economic areas, and military is involved, but clearly not entirely involved. And just how much that matters for economic progress. But all right, Ja, on to you.
Well, the biggest problem Myanmar will continue to have will be the division among different groups between the military and the resistance group within the different groups in the country, and then also within and between different groups in the country. So basically, the kind of political negotiation ethnic armed organizations used to make with both the Thein Sein administration and the NLD administration led by Aung San Suu Kyi, that is not there anymore. Ethnic armed organizations they now don't want, and they also feel that they deserve highly decentralized federalism. And then sometimes the ethnic armed organizations, I should not say ethnic armed organizations, some ethnic people like to say that they don't want independence, but they want confederation. So I had to tell them, like, well, you cannot have confederation unless you want independence. So that kind of situation is going on. And then the political division will continue to exist unless something really miraculous happened, which I don't really foresee will happen. Because of that, Myanmar will continue to be a political pariah in the international community. Socially, that is one of the biggest problems that we will have to address when there is a return of democracy, if ever. That is public trust in the system, public trust in each other. It has declined tremendously beyond what one could imagine. So the trust circle has shrunk significantly for each and every one. So you cannot really trust people. You cannot really trust the system. And then, people, as I said earlier, they will still go to support the resistance. At the same time, their trust in the resistance movement has declined significantly too. So rebuilding public trust in the system and also for each other will become a huge challenge in the future. And then the second social problem I would highlight will be trauma. Myanmar now is a country with highly traumatized people. We don't really have a functioning support system. That is also another reason we should address. When you look at drug abuse, when you look at alcohol abuse, when you look at the number of gender-based violence cases, all those things were contributed by the trauma people are experiencing or people are having. And economically, the military said, the new government will address the economic issue. But the problem is people talk about sanctions. Oh, because of sanctions, we are experiencing this problem, that problem. But local business people said more problems caused by self-imposed restrictions by the military. So they are quietly hoping that things would be stabilized and there would be less restrictions. And then, in the past, when the government imposed restrictions on the economy, people could still resort to the black market. The black market sector would thrive. But right now, between Chiang Rai and Yangon, the land route, there are more than 150 checkpoints. Business people, whenever they try to smuggle something through that route, they have to bribe people, security officials at checkpoint, at every checkpoint. So it's basically economically not viable to even engage in any form of illegal business activities other than gun running and drug. One last thing is like, China factor. Years ago, if I remember correctly, it was in 1995. I was doing coursework at Cornell, and then I came across a paper written by George Cahan's, one of George Cahan's former student. And later someone told me that that person was a CIA agent. He wrote a research paper, the China-Myanmar relations, and his conclusion. And in a few decades down the road, I'm paraphrasing, Myanmar is likely to become a province of China. I never thought that we are too nationalist to become a province of China. That's what I used to think. But if we are going to, if we might not become, Myanmar might not become formally a province of China, informally, we already are. And then like a real last thing is balkanization of the country. If Myanmar political leaders, I'm not talking about the military, those in the opposition, if they don't start acting, or they don't get their act together, and then Myanmar could really split up, and then we could see a number of different countries sometime in the near future. I hope that will not happen, but we are now really experiencing that risk.
Okay. So much to think about for both these countries, and in the wake of both these very unusual elections and complex sets of electoral rules. Thanks to both of you, Joel Selway and Kyaw Yin Hlaing. Really, really appreciate your sharing your expertise and your time. And for those who were not here at the outset, this will be posted online on the SEAC Southeast Asia Consortium website shortly for those who want to watch again or watch anew. So thanks again to both of you. And with that, we will wrap things up.
Thanks,